Let's see, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out to this i612 educational event. It should be good. We're actually really looking forward to this. We have a great panel that will be hopefully leading us in a very lively discussion. So we have a keynote, then we have a panel, then afterwards we encourage questions. So at that point, if you ask a question, you get a drink ticket. So that's the way we're encouraging questions. Yeah, right. That's good. So if you ask a ton, you can get totally hammered after the event. With that, I'd like to introduce Dan Wallace. He is from Compass Point, and he's going to be our moderator tonight.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear the hammer. Okay, so I guess I whipped up a couple of slides before this started. I spent about 10 minutes putting these together. Actually, I had to go to the Starbucks to get the Wi-Fi. So, but basically, the idea is that we're here to talk about video, right? Digital video. We're all in the digital video business. The title of the presentation is "Video: The Power of Sight, Sound, and Motion," and that's a fine title, but it might be an inadequate title. I wanted to call it Video Kill the Media. Nobody liked that because it's depressing and nobody got the reference because it raised to the eye.
I got it!
Buggles? Now the Buggles did a song Video Kill the Radio Star. It was the first video on MTV. And what's interesting about that is that did video actually kill the radio star? It actually didn't. We still have radio. We still have radio stars. And it's been 30 years. But was it disruptive? Yeah, MTV was disruptive as hell. And digital video is the same way. And we're still trying to figure out how it is. Everybody remember this guy? I apologize for the pixelated quality of this, but this video is so old that I couldn't even get a high quality video of the Star Wars game. This was, I don't know, 2002, 2003, maybe? This was maybe the first viral video, maybe. But the key thing about this was everybody knows what this is, and it's hard to remember, but this went viral before YouTube, years before YouTube. When people were seeing this and sharing it and showing it to their friends, it was on like all kinds of strange websites. Like you had to go to, there was no clearinghouse for it. But it proved the idea that people will seek out content. It doesn't have to be good content. It just has to be funny. It can be low quality, it can be pixelated, it can be all these things. But if people like it, they will find it, and the internet as broadband and speeds got up to speed actually enabled that. What did that lead to? Well, YouTube, when it came out in 2005, became the Great White Shark. And what did that lead to? And I apologize for putting a movie slide in here. I'm so lazy. I shouldn't have put this on. Everybody puts this on. But it became crazy, right? There's so much out there that can happen. This is what video has wrought. So YouTube became this is what I think is really interesting in that YouTube and digital video in general have at this point become so mainstream that the Great White Shark has remoras leading off of it. So the little fish on the bottom is called a remora. They actually attach to the sharks and they feed off of the scraps that the shark eats. And in this case, that would be a tie. But that's a television show that wouldn't exist if it weren't for digital video and the ecosystem, the sort of fan-created ecosystem. Basically, he's just a curator of content, and he's doing it in the traditional fashion on television. And that's how video has upended the traditional ecosystem. Another way that video has upended the traditional television ecosystem is, unfortunately, is actually an R.I.R. television show. What does it mean, though? I mean, there's one of the things that we're going to talk about on the panel. There's one of the things Peg is going to talk about in this keynote. But how do we even know whether this is the same thing as television, whether we should be treating it like television, whether we should be measuring it like television? Everybody probably saw this a couple of weeks ago. Nielsen says they're going to measure online streaming, so for Netflix and that. So try to get a better understanding of all that. And it's great. And I'm like, well, that's really cool. But one of the problems is we still have this divide. If I like community, and I want television, I know what the ratings for community are, and then Nielsen steps in and says, here's the television ratings for community, plus all the online ratings for community. It's great for me as a viewer to know all those people are out there, or as the producer of a television show. In advertising right now, in most agencies, it doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of difference. Because we have the great divide. We have the digital planners are over here, and the television planners are over here, and they're buying out of completely different budget pools. So Nielsen can combine those things all they want, but we have to kind of combine our own efforts, which leads to the other looming specter in the digital display ecosystem. As inventory increased, we saw the need to manage that inventory increase, and we saw the rise of programmatic buying. So, are we all going to get replaced by robots? I don't know. Is digital video exactly the same? There's not as much inventory out there. There's a need for people to program the robots. So, that's good. But we'll see what that means. But in terms of, is it an important ecosystem? Absolutely. It's so important that it's completely upended the traditional model of how people are seeing stuff. So the questions are, how do we measure it? How do we sell it to our clients? And what the hell do we do next? Is it this? So, Ted is going to answer all those questions for us. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. I've also learned not to put that next to my cell phone. Oh, that's so great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dan. That was both insightful and funny. So first of all, I'm Ted. Brandon Jury, yes, it's TEG, and I don't have my name. That's very bad of me. I am the co-founder and the head of product management at Adapt TV. This is definitely not going to be an infomercial for Adapt TV, so I'm about to take you through a few slides that have real data from our State of the Industry report. I'll describe that in just a second. But before I do, let me briefly tell you who I am and who Adapt TV is. So I founded Adapt TV 6 years ago with my co-founder, Ashkenazi, who's now still our CEO. We founded it on the principle that digital video was an area that was going to go through explosive growth because of changing viewership. So that was pretty obvious 6 years ago in the early days of YouTube. And we knew that the ad infrastructure was just not going to adapt properly. So we founded a company based on the premise that we could bring better tools to allow for more efficient and more effective advertising, more effective transactions between buyers and sellers of advertising, specifically targeted at digital video. And it's turned out to be a great thing. We've experienced a lot of growth, and I'm very fortunate to announce that we have a tremendous customer base and a great deal of volume going through our platform today. The offerings that we have at Adapt TV, just so everyone knows, we offer a technology platform that is used both by buyers, that is generally agencies and printing presses, and also by sellers, media companies. Sellers use it to open their inventory to programmatic buying of that inventory, so they set up private marketplaces usually. And agencies use it to manage their campaigns so that they can get a unified measurement across a complete digital video campaign, no matter where it's running, and better understand the effectiveness of the media while bringing in their own data and doing some of the more sophisticated things that programmatic allows for. So we believe that video is different, and that video and TV will for the next 10 or 15 years be bought, be planned, bought, and measured together as a holistic entity, and that is going to need new tools, because God knows that doesn't really work very well today. And we also believe in programmatic advertising. We believe that the way ads are bought and sold today is incredibly inefficient and expensive, both on the sell side and on the buy side. Folks, those of you who've been on the sell side know that operating an ad sales force and all of the ad operations required is incredibly expensive. It's a very expensive way to get those ad dollars. And on the buy side, we also, you guys probably have much more direct knowledge of the fact that
running a campaign, a well-executed digital video campaign today is incredibly painful. It involves countless hours of media planners and buyers and sending out RFPs and collecting proposals and negotiating pricing and eventually signing IOs and integrating measurement and data from third parties and cool, sophisticated rich media formats. And it's just an incredible amount of work just to execute a basic campaign, which on television is actually a lot easier to do. So we would like actually to make digital video a better child of both television and digital. We'd like it to combine the best of television, the best of television. We hope that it can take the sort of efficiency of the transaction and the broad reach. And from digital, we hope that it can take some of the sophistication around the targeting and the accountability of the medium. So that's a little bit about AdaptTV, but I'm going to focus now on our State of the Industry report. So this is available, or at least big parts of this are available online, so you can go check it out at AdaptTV. I'm not sure I can find the URL later. But twice a year we work with Digiday to survey people in the industry. And we reach out to 700 professionals, and they span, what's kind of cool about this, they span the industry. So we reach out to people that are inside brands, people inside agencies, trading desks, DSPs, ad networks, and finally publishers. And we ask them about digital video, how they're buying it, selling it, what tools they're using, what their concerns are, and so on. So I'm going to go through some of those findings right now. Okay, so first of all, this shouldn't be a surprise for anyone, but they're going to spend more money on digital video in 2012 than in 2011, okay, 27% more. And I think if you look at eMarketer, for example, they'll tell you that it's running fast, 30 or 40% year on year. People often ask, where is the money coming from? When we buy digital video, is the money coming out of digital display? Is it coming out of print? Is it coming out of TV? And so on. So here was last year's, 2011. So the nice thing is we've done the same question several years in a row, so we can compare what's happening now versus the past. So last year you can see people were saying, hey, yeah, we're stealing it from TV, print, and display. And this year it's actually a little bit different. You can see that it's actually more incremental and more being stolen from display. Make of it what you will, but that's what we see. And I'm just going to speed through these because I got a lot, and you guys can only sit there for so long. So this is one of our favorite questions from way back, because we maintain that video is different, right? It's different. It's not just another display format. It's not just another digital format. And so, our thesis, of course, is that it should be planned and bought in conjunction with TV, as I just said. And that point of view has been gaining ground. It's gaining ground slowly, but it is gaining ground. And now more than half of the folks out there believe that video should be purchased, planned and bought in a way that's coordinated with TV. 67% of those who said, I'm trying to remember what this means, that it should be planned and bought with television, view it as a direct complement to TV. So that's significant. You can imagine, okay, it should be planned and bought with TV, but it's still its own entity. Or you can say, no, it's actually, it is television, right? And we're saying 67% of people think that it is television. It should be a component of the TV budget. Okay? So 48% of, this is actually big, 48% of the agencies, and now 58% of the agencies are planning TV and online video together. I spoke to some people today in Minneapolis who have consolidated the planning and buying of television and digital video, and it makes a ton of sense, right? It needs to be done in a rational way. And one of the challenges I hope we'll talk about as a panel is that the data and the tool sets really still aren't there. There was some data available from Nielsen and from ComScore that help bridge and understand the holistic reach, for example, of a campaign that has digital and TV parts. But I think most of you are probably very familiar, it's still very early and very rudimentary. If you're going to plan and buy these two together, you need a holistic way to know how big those audiences are. Okay. These are people saying that over half of the audience saying that TV and video planning today are too siloed. Again, same theme. Okay? And here, coming back to this notion of unified reporting, if you had access to unified reporting, would you optimize between TV and digital? Of course, right? But there's a big if here. So, what does optimize between TV and digital mean? I think it means that rather than taking a hard allocation and saying, I'm going to spend 10% or 20% of my budget on digital video and 80 or 90% on TV, you would instead say, I am going to pick the allocation between those two media that is going to maximize the reach that I get for that budget that I have at the frequency that I want. That is what should happen. Okay, this is another topic. Guaranteed audiences. How many of you have started to use some sort of third-party audience validation in your campaigns, like Nielsen or Comscore? Okay. How many of you have actually asked in your RFPs to media providers for them to make some sort of guarantee about the delivery to the target that you care about? Okay. Not too many yet. Let me tell you, nationwide, this is starting to happen. You see both sides of it. A lot of agencies are now, because they have this amazing tool, they have a flashlight, they can go and see who's actually doing the campaign. They're asking the media providers to deliver a large fraction of the impressions inside the target. It makes total sense, right? And one of the things that that we can talk about is how well is that going? What kind of tools are there to try to deliver in target? So, I think on television is actually better at delivering high audiences to a particular target, high fraction of the target than digital. Surprising, right? We like to think of digital as being an incredibly efficient medium where you use data and you only target exactly the users that you want. Well, in reality, that works pretty well if you're doing like behavioral campaigns and you have like a CPA target or something. It doesn't work very well if you're just trying to target a particular demographic segment. Tell you firsthand all of that. Okay, so agencies are, brands and agencies are asking for these in-target guarantees. How are advertisers buying video? These are different channels they could be using. They can obviously do TV upfronts. They can use trading desks. They can use DSPs, exchanges, ad networks, and direct from publishers. Most people are using ad networks and direct from publishers in addition to their TV upfronts. And one thing that's kind of interesting here is that the needle is moving toward programmatic buying. So they're working more with their trading desks, their DSPs, and exchanges to buy that digital video. Yeah, same data. Okay, we're getting there. What do you think of when you hear the term programmatic? Buyers think about audience buying. Makes sense, right? Because that's the value that buyers get. They get to cherry pick exactly the audiences they want. That's what programmatic allows them. Programmatic technologies like RTB. Sellers think about RTB. This doesn't necessarily preclude audience buying, but they're focused on the mechanism that they need to enable, right? Sellers think, oh, I got to open my direct RTB, and the buyers like, ching ching, I can target audiences directly. Okay, and who's using RTB? This is at the beginning of 2012. At the end of 2012, it's gotten many higher. This is RTB in video, by the way. So RTB is TV in video, by the way. So RTB is very well used in display. I think you guys all know trading desks are using that very heavily. This is doing video. And you see that the trading desks, who previously were not doing a lot of volume in video, I can tell you firsthand, have actually started to kick into gear as video buying shops. And now starting to get some of their member agencies to send dollars to them. Okay, how do you sell video? This is obviously a sell side question. Interesting here. Less direct sales and more ad networks and exchanges. Okay, what's your biggest concern about public marketplaces? Public marketplaces is like an ad exchange, right? And and I think this is a sell side question. These are sellers responding. Okay, so they are worried about sales channel conflict. Totally rational. And they're worried that they're not getting as much as they get in the direct channel. Totally makes sense. And I think this sets up an interesting discussion we can have around our premium sellers, premium publishers, going to adopt programmatic trading technology or not? And if they are, what's that technology going to have to look like? My thesis is that they will, but that it's going to have to look a bit different than the RTB that we have today. Okay? What's interesting though, publishers are embracing private marketplaces. I think it's because it provides them more of that control that they're looking for. Inventory available programmatically has grown a lot, and even CPMs are growing in the programmatic channel. That's something we have a lot of transparency toward because we operate in the adaptive marketplace. Okay, this is some data from our marketplace. Most of our publishers are getting good fill in the programmatic channel. Brands have, so another interesting topic we can cover is viewability. Okay, so how many of you in here are starting to ask your media providers directly whether or not their inventory is viewable? Okay. So not the point of this deck, but third parties like ComScore have done some studies to look at how viewable inventory is out there in general in display. And they found out that in a broad range of campaigns, on average, 30% of the impressions that were being bought in display units were not viewable. Okay, that's extremely wasteful, and nobody should be spending their money that way, right? So in video, this is even more an issue, I would contend, because in display, usually you can tell because the performance is terrible. Right? In video, people don't generally care about click-through rate. Right? People care about that impression. And sometimes they even look at completion rate. And which way does completion rate go when the inventory is not viewable? It goes up. Right? Completion rate is 100% of a non-viewable ad. Right? It just plays. Nobody stops it. So it's a hard thing unless you have some technology to detect. And it's something that the industry needs to fix and embrace. And it's something we're working on. Okay, something obviously brands and agencies care about. Their money being wasted. Okay, this is the fun part. So our predictions about the industry, totally not based, totally our opinion. Okay, not necessarily objective. Greater collaboration between broadcast and digital teams doesn't seem too controversial. Okay? Viewability as a measurement is going to become standardized. Probably going to be standardized by the IAB. We're working on part of it. Brand clients are going to, we're clearly going to see an increase in video being served to mobile platforms. Video, I think, is becoming the way to monetize mobile. Right? Mobile display units, not so great. Video is a great medium for mobile. Oh, all right. And that's it. So with that, I think I'll turn it back to, should you want to do questions now or questions for the panel?
Well, how about, is this on? I can't tell.
You might.
Yeah, okay.
There you go.
Sorry. Still not doing it.
There
it
you
is.
go.
It has to warm up. Solid notes. So I think we'll have everybody up here, and then we can do all the questions so everybody gets a chance to throw their 2 cents.
Great. Thanks.
So this is the moment that anybody can take any seat, except a seat with a drink, is this in line. This is what everybody's been waiting for because, as Craig said, if you ask questions, you can win a free drink ticket. So there's something in it for everybody. Actually, I don't need to monitor it. So. Okay, so we have a lot of brain power, and so I definitely want to make a chance that we actually use all the brain power at our disposal. But we will open it up for questions, because that way you guys will be able to benefit from all the brain power up here. So I've already introduced, or you already know Ted from Adapt TV. This is an excellent chance to test whether or not the microphones are working. So why don't we do a round robin and everybody will do it. You'll also see the curious fact that we have 2 Joes and 2 Dans on the panel. Because we didn't have a lot of money for the panel, so we decided to share names. Go ahead.
Not talking to me. I'm one of the Jills Peterson. I'm from Hayworth and I'm the video activation manager.
I'm Dan Moretti, I'm a technical sales director at Point Roll, and I have a background in creative.
I'm Jill Drushke. I run the video platform for Real Media Group.
I'm Ed Haslam. I run marketing at Uni Corporation.
We really should have our microphones. I'll donate my microphone to anybody who needs it. But like I said, this is meant to be a collaborative thing. We have a lot of really smart people up here, so anybody who wants to answer a question, please do. But to show off the fact that these are actually really smart people, let's get everybody going with a initial question. So, now, one of the things that Tek was talking about is the ability to determine whether or not digital video is like television. As he showed on a lot of those things, digital video is taking money away from television. Is digital video the same thing as television? Should we be using the same assets in the television space? Should we be encouraging our clients to use their creative things, the 30, and just plug it into that space? And at the end of the day, how do we prove that any of this is working as well as television? That's actually 4 questions. So anybody who wants to take a crack at the challenge of trying to measure up against television, or the opportunity, or the benefit, or why we kick ass against television, please do.
So I'll take the question of should we reuse the broadcast assets for digital. And I'm actually going to give a little credit to the UMI guys because they just conducted a pretty awesome study that is full of creative information. And what they found, and I think it holds true, but I feel there's a struggle between the agencies, is that TV produced content, it's really easy to repurpose it and throw it online. And I think that's sort of the low barrier of entry that a lot of agencies are approaching the problem or the concern with digital video from. But what they found quite compelling is that it doesn't work. It doesn't perform the way I think our agency friends would want it to. And unless you're looking for boosting your ad awareness online, in that case it works better than web original content. And I think that's a really, at least from a technology company perspective, I think we want to make things easy, and the content is something that you need to create to make it, to get it online. So that's the part of the question I'm going to answer.
And do you have thoughts on that? Because it was your company study, so we're very interested in this one.
So yes, thanks. There was a study we did with Millward Brown on Dynamic Logic against their norms database. And the one caveat I'd throw in there is that we do increasingly, as Tek said in his DigiDay survey, we increasingly see more and more agencies with their clients planning TV in concert with digital video. So digital video is not better than TV. Digital video complements TV. And when you plan them together, you get the best of both worlds. And the one piece of that Millward Brown study that did show that for the people who are planning it together and working and taking that TV asset and moving it to digital, and they're looking at extending, if you will, the effective reach and the breakthrough of that message in the TV campaign. Made for TV does work great when that is your objective. If you do have other objectives, made for web does work better. But when you're planning in concert, it does make a lot of sense to plan in concert. There's some great tools from Nielsen to help you plan. And there are some great tools from Nielsen and Comscore to help you measure after the fact. But it's still a work in progress, and it's probably more than anything a business model issue within our agency and brand worlds, and that we just have had those silos up. And it's really the first time that digital video is really a great branding platform in the last 12 to 24 months.
Well, I thought the other part of the study that I liked was the part where you assess if you add something to your TV ad, how much more does it activate? I just wonder for the room, like how many of you come from a TV planning background? Like 3. And so the rest of you come from a digital planning background, is that right? You need to find a buddy who plans TV. Because the incentives and the currency, I'll take the, is it working thing? The incentives and the currencies are totally different than what you guys are working on. The TV planner wants reach frequency, they have retail GRPs they have to meet, they have to spend a certain amount of money, and they have a whole, what I call the GRP industrial complex, all built up. And everything that they do has to fit into that, or retailers get upset, things get taken off shelves. So there's a lot of incentive there to fall into a natural system that complements what they're already doing in TV. And that's kind of the shift you see with all of us kind of adding Nielsen into our platforms, new GRP planning, and things like that. And on a cross-functional basis, for those of you who are planning digital, you can do a lot more around brand acquisition, telling a story, going across platforms, and that tends to be your currency and incentives tend to be more comp score oriented. That's what you're comfortable with, those are the systems you have in place. So the story of like, is it working is really like, are you looking for incremental reach? Are you looking for someone who's active with your brand? Are you looking to get them into an ecosystem of social interaction? But, I mean, you really have to decide what's working for you and look at the incentives that you can align with, because there are sort of, you know, kind of a couple of ways that you can approach how you use video in an overall planning mechanism, and that'll make a difference of, do you want to just put the TV ad as it is online so you can compare apples to apples and figure out your reach numbers and make those additive and make your retailer happy? Or do you want to kind of add something extra to that and make it live in lots of places and get people to share it? That's going to make a difference in the kind of content that you make too. So I think that's sort of like the two worlds that we live in. And I don't know if they're necessarily fighting. I think they're complementary at this point. But we're speaking slightly different languages just because of the incentives that each of us are given depending on where we come from.
That's an excellent answer. Now I'm even more interested to hear what the other Jill has. Because the other Jill is our ringer on the panel. She comes from the only one on the panel from the agency background and has a traditional television background as well. So you have a unique perspective, I think, on the entire everything that we're talking about.
I would agree that if you have a client that's spending money with a broadcast production budget and that same video creative can live on in digital platforms, to me it's sort of a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you if you already have it? Yes, there are certainly things you can do to enhance it with hotspotting or making it shoppable and kind of expanding the user experience beyond what's being presented from just like a straight TV. But I definitely think it is going to increase frequency against that viewer and just giving continuity of messaging. And if you're in the same environment on the linear side or the digital side, if it's with an app or a full episode player or what have you, that giving the viewer a consistent experience is beneficial in the long run.
Very good. Let me, I'm gonna pose another question to the panel, and at that point, you might want to see what people are thinking. You're my favorite.
Working at it.
Which is, we were talking a little bit about this earlier, and I was thinking about this question, and we never really had a chance to get into it, but I'm really interested at this point to hear what the panel thinks. This is, I'm going off script here, but I was wondering if we feel, just in this room, doesn't have to leave this room, are people who watch digital video spoiled in the sense that we're in the business of putting ads in front of people? People who watch digital video are not used to having ads in front of them. They actually don't like to have ads in front of them. They actually install ad blocks so they don't have to look at ads in front of them. And within the television ecosystem, television was around before any of us were alive. We're so used to that ecosystem that it's being paid for with that magazine saying everything is fine. Digital, people have come to expect that it's always going to be free, even when the distribution and the resources required, the servers, the bandwidth, it costs money. How do we overcome, I think we're chipping away at it, how do we overcome the user perception that I'm okay with watching an ad on television, I'll get up and get a sandwich, but God forbid you put one in front of my digital video.
You can't skip it. I'm the worst. Like I showroom. I'm an unrepentant showroomer. I have the Amazon app and I take pictures of the barcodes. If you know, Costco, and when they don't have something that has reviews, I'm like, I'm not buying this. I don't know what Costco souped up with this side deal with these guys. And I can't think of, like, I can identify commercials that I've watched on TV, but everything is running through the DVR. I mean, I'd only be able to watch half as much TV, and I live in LA, and if you go into somebody's office and you haven't watched their TV show, so we watch a lot of TV. So you gotta cut down your time and go through all of it, and you know, digital video, I watch the commercials, right? It's forced, right? And so I remember those snippets, and you guys might say this too, like you remember those snippets you saw from TV, and they're paced really well for your 3-second DVR skip, and then you see it online, and you're like, oh yeah, that's that, and then maybe you share it, or maybe you watch some other ads from that company. So, I don't know.
I guess that's a good point, because I would say that you're right in that every study I've seen, people pay more attention to ads when they're in digital video stream. They lean forward versus lean back experience. You're not going to get up to make a sandwich. You don't know how long the pot is going to be. You don't know how long the pot is going to be in coverage. But I would argue that I feel, maybe I'm wrong, I feel like there's a underlying current of consumer resentment toward this channel. Like, oh my God, maybe it's not as prevalent on a Hulu or something that, or an ABC.com that feels like television. But if I'm watching a 1.5-minute video on how to fix the hole in my ceiling with drywall, and because there's a lot of that video, I mean, that's kind of what a lot of what we're talking about in terms of inventory is going to be those kind of videos. And what is my tolerance for watching a stock for that?
So I'll take that, because I think you bring up a great point. It's about the content, right? So I think there certainly is a backlash amongst consumers in there. Free, UGC, fun. We were just at a meeting today where I was introduced to the Screaming Goats video. It's a first for me. Really like the meeting up. But you know, you don't want to see an ad in front of something like that, right? That's just, it's not curated content. Maybe for some people that's curated content. In the world of curated content, whether it be short form or long form, I think there's an inherent, exchange of value that's going on that people are aware of. And yes, even in the world of TV, some of us hate commercials, and we figure out any way we can to get away from those commercials. That's going to be true in digital as well. But the reality is, in the mid-tail or in the full episode player head end of content that's curated, I think there is an implicit understanding that somebody's got to pay to have this content made, and this little ad I'm going to watch is going to do that. But in the long tail, yeah, you're always going to have that problem. So I think it's content oriented, not necessarily consumer oriented.
I think the brands need to stand up more for what they want in the ecosystem overall. It's a funny thing, I feel like when the web was born, just to take an example, people the publisher, the big portals at the time, fell into this pattern of selling display advertisements, which the initial were very small. And they were not good units for branding. They did not call much attention. They didn't have a lot of value. And advertisers bought them anyway. Sort of regarded digital as small at the time, so they didn't put up a big fuss. And really they should have put up a big fuss, because it took us down this whole road that took 15 years to sort of unwind, where now finally we have the IAB and a bunch of major publishers coming out and supporting and endorsing much better than Rising Stars ad units that are now becoming more and more widely adopted and are creating, I think, a lot more value for brand advertisers in display. And that should have happened 10 years ago. And I think there's something similar here. I'm not sure exactly, I'm sort of just talking off the cuff, but advertisers need to put their foot down and make sure the measurement reflects the exposure. We need to push Nielsen and Comscore harder to move faster, better. And they need to not pay for things that they're not getting. Right? So, there was sort of a number of years back when Nielsen decided to expand the measurement of TV programs to include the so-called C3 window. That was a huge step. Well, it was actually a compromise. It was a negotiated compromise, from what I understand, between the buy and sell side. The buyers got something and the sellers got something. But I think we need more of that for the buyers and sellers coming to the table with the measurement companies and saying, hey, we got to measure actually what's happening. And as that happens, times when users are skipping ads for content that become not paid for, publishers will magically find a way to prevent that from happening. So I think it all comes back, because the whole ecosystem is driven by the brands, right? By the brands and the agencies, and it cascades all the way down. If the brands stick up for what they want and are consistent on measuring the value that they're getting, then the rest of the free content will go away, or at least some people have to pay for it in some way or another, and the rest of them just sort of fall out.
Very good. I actually have a ton of questions written down, and I'm not going to get to any of them because I think we should open up for Q&A, because I saw Craig earlier. He has an entire fist full of drink tickets. He doesn't have just like 2 or 3. He has tons of them. So if anybody wants one, or actually if you want to learn something, I should have led with if you want to learn something, but they go hand in hand. So questions. Let's open it up to questions. Who's got questions? I'm gonna do the some more.
Okay. All right. Sarah, really? You gonna be thirsty?
Well, I said I also want to go to.
You're really thirsty? Is that the deal?
I'm actually going to give this away. So.
Okay. Oh yeah, you're a mom and stuff now.
Yeah. Is anyone else concerned about the fact that we're taking money away from display to support digital video versus TV? I mean, those are really deep pockets versus not so deep pockets with digital to begin with. I mean, obviously you're probably swayed another way, but.
No, I mean, our video budget is our video budget.
Oh,
At
really?
the end of the day,
Can you elaborate?
if it is not like super specifically, but
Like, how did that get sold in?
What's your
Who's
average?
listening to buy it?
it is a holistic video budget. It includes TV, VOD, full episode players, Hulu, cinema, eventually maybe the Delta in-flight movies, maybe mobile. But it truly is anywhere video messaging can be delivered. It's part of one budget. And whether it comes from the TV side or the display side, I think is more of an understanding of what the ideal spend is in TV and not reducing that spend too much and making sure that that is intact, and then what is the ideal spend in on
So it's the leftovers.
No. Not at all. But it doesn't necessarily have to come from display. It could come from channels that are dying. Or it could parts of it could come from display.
Yeah, I think
Because it's still living in a digital environment, and it's still consumers going on seeking that content. So
yeah, I don't think I'd think of it as the money's coming from another digital channel, or it's cannibalizing some other digital channel. What's happening is brand marketing is equalizing to the attention levels that the media is getting. There's some media that is not getting the attention that the dollars are going to. It's the quote-unquote famous Meeker gap of attention, right? And, Smart Sorrell says $20 billion will move from print to digital. And a lot of that will go to video. Now that he can pontificate because he's united. The reality is that in branding, where brands are trying to figure out how do I influence, how do I grow the top part of the funnel, how do I connect the top part of the funnel to the bottom part of the funnel. Video is a great channel for that, and it's working better than some of the traditional channels that those dollars used to go to. And that's where I think the growth will come from.
I think of it a little bit differently. One is that TV is old school, and when you work with TV people, they know their industry is shrinking, and they are very political, and they understand how to hold on to their money. People who come from digital are very earnest. They say, I want to work together, and we go kumbaya, and we get money taken away. So if you work in digital, you got to be a little savvier. This is the same buddying up with somebody who's in TV. You told me this was an industry building panel, so I'm going to be straight with you guys. I think the other piece of it is when you talk about how you use display, if you're not talking about it holistically and the role it plays in your campaign, right, you can't just throw it in there. Right? I was talking to a client the other day where we were talking about a re-engagement targeting of you made a completed view on this video. How many times are they going to watch your video? It's the same content with one commercial, right? So we know they completed 3 views. Let's push them onto something else. Yes, display is more of a billboard. They're not going to click on it, but it's a cost-effective way to make them feel like you're everywhere. You're telling a big story. You're getting that message out there in lots of places. So you couple some kind of progression, and you can sell it in, again, as more of a comprehensive story, moving people from the point of, saying like, I have cars, then to, hey, I you should buy my car, right? And that's sort of the shift, because in video we're still kind of doing the, hey, I have cars, look over here, hopefully you want to buy a car someday, and you remember who I am. But you have the power in digital to say, I know you're in the market, I know your lease is coming up. Let me put this in front of you in a few different ways, and hopefully you engage with one of them. Or one of your friends says, I heard you're in the market for a car, because you see lots of ads coming up on your stuff. Right? So we have to be better advocates for the role that different pieces play in the life cycle of a campaign. Otherwise, those budgets, it's easy to say, like, this isn't doing anything for me. So.
And I won't talk specifically about taking money away from display, because that's above what I get paid to talk about. But what I will talk about is video, specifically online. You can engage, you can put interactive features into it. You can put elements of display ads or elements of rich media ads in a video campaign, and you can garner a lot more measurement, as a lot of the panelists are talking about, from those campaigns that you can't get from television. And that really comes down to the fact that we have hardware on our machines, and we have methods of tracking, and you know, we have the ability to do that type of stuff on digital, whether it's display, rich media, or video campaigns, and TV doesn't. I'm reminded, the analogy I'm going to use is from a while back, but look at print and digital, and that's the same conversation we're having today about video and television. Print, albeit it still exists as radio does, but we're having the same conversation about television dollars and digital video dollars that we had 10 years ago about print dollars versus online dollars.
It's a smaller pie. It just keeps getting a smaller pie. I mean, we still have television. We still have newspapers. People still read them. People still read magazines. People still look at billboards. People still hang signs outside. Sign hanging has been around since the 1600s. It's the oldest form of advertising that there is. And it's still there. I think the challenge for us is that all these things get introduced alongside each other. None of them truly replaces the other. They get really small. I think newspapers are going to get really, really small. But I don't think it's ever going to truly go away. We'll still have free newspapers, and we'll still have city pages in that, 20 years from now. It's the challenge is we have to figure out how all those things work alongside each other, especially everybody in this room. A lot of those things are just going to become digital by default. And television, the distribution channel and the methods for it are becoming digital. Same thing with, we know that that's the same thing with out of home. It's certainly the same with journalism and what newspapers used to do. So I think there's an opportunity. When I had the slide up there earlier about the Great Divide, that's a great opportunity for most of us to demonstrate that. I mean, I'd be interested in your perspective on it, Joe, because you kind of have that sort of dual role on that. And from an agency side, a lot of us are planners. This potentially can open up a lot of fertile grounds.
I don't think people are going to stop watching television. I mean, it's the easiest thing to go home and turn on the TV. How many people on this room are probably going to do that? They don't really watch.
But that television's that pipe that the TV comes through. Like,
yeah,
you can't just sit and go through Google now, right? So Google owns the pipe that's coming through. So is that digital or is that television?
Every channel is digital. VOD is on your TV, but that is a digital channel.
But I think the relevant distinction is sort of which sales channels it goes through, right? If it's going through the traditional TV buying team, which is, buying from a TV sales team, right? Or if it's going through the digital video buying team that's going through the digital sales team. But those distinctions will go away. But right now those are almost completely separate processes, right?
Not for us.
No, I know. I'm delighted about that. But I'm saying most agencies still today, obviously we're moving them together, but really in reality, getting people to sit together today, the next thing is to actually have a plan together, right? So planning is the big thing. And the problem there is the tools. Like, frankly, sorry, I took over the voice. But I really think your digital video budget actually should steal from TV, just to put it out there. And the reason is that a lot of studies have shown that TV is hitting the same heavy TV viewers over and over again. Right? You're taking some famous Nielsen statistic from a couple years ago, 80% of your dollars are going to the same 20% of heavy TV users, and you're only taking a very small number of dollars and stretching beyond that small core group. And like, that's not a good use of funds. Now, in order to do better than that, you need to have really great panel-based measurement that you can use to select your media outlets much more carefully. That's something that the industry is working on.
Yeah, and we, as a team that I work on, everything is planned very holistically. All of the various platforms that are available, and working with a specific partner and making sure that they're on the sales side with a network that both the linear and the digital teams are engaged in the same conversation, and making sure that our investment and delivery of our guests are somewhat commensurate with how that viewership is taking place. If 80% of modern family viewership comes from watching it live, then that's where about 80% of our investment in that content would go, and 15% would be on VOD and 5% would be on for that. Those are me, but
Hands are going up. So,
We got to do Craig. We have to wait until Craig makes his way with the magic microphones.
Sorry, I just want to recognize, I think it's all about how consumption is shifting and where the audiences are living, and how to reach them the most effective way. TV is never going to go away. Video is a complement to that. I have a good friend who works for NBC Universal. E-Entertainment, E-Online has typically been a very young female demo. Well, the way they're consuming media is completely different now. So what are they doing to supplement? Video is becoming a huge, huge push. So I think you just have to go where your audiences are consuming the media. It's really all about the balance in the mix.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think that two interesting things that we said. One is the TV, the prime time, head-end TV buying model that we're all criticizing and saying we don't like. It's driven by a model that's well established, which is scarcity. It's a scarcity-based buy. That kind of buy for that kind of content, as long as there's demand and an audience for it, will always be there. It should always be bought and sold that way because it works. But fragmentation of the rest of the content and viewership is only going to get worse. We're seeing screens, and you just mentioned screens like billboards becoming digital. So billboard will no longer be a banner ad. Right? Billboard will be video. Right? So we see just a proliferation of fragmentation of screens. So when we say digital video, most of us often just normally think, oh, that's online, that's web. It's not. I mean, you know how much inventory there is in Pandora and mobile? It's insane, right? And because there's so many people listening to that channel, right? And so that the amount of inventory on these alternative screens, these alternative content types, where you have huge audiences is fractionally fragmenting. And you need help finding them, you need help reaching them, you need help getting that creative across all those channels. And then you have all this idea of measurement. Measurement between TV and online web is just now being solved. You know, Comscore and Nielsen are after it. But measurement across TV, online, mobile, across smartphones and tablets and connected TV is a long way from being solved. But we still need to address the fact that that's where our audience is. So that we got to go get them, we have to go find them, and we have to go get the creative in front of them.
I'd even go one further. I think until we start measuring earned media and that has value, you guys are getting screwed by not having earned media measurement, because somebody shares something, they watch it, it propagates out. Like you, especially when you start that chain with paid media, that's all yours, right? I mean, you prime the pump when you use paid media for generating earned media. And I think eventually we will have to have some kind of currency around earned media impressions that fits into that model as well.
So this is actually pretty, I won't say forward-thinking, but yeah, so on South by Southwest, they were talking about a lot of things, but one of the things that came up was wearable technology, and there's been a lot of buzz about Google Glass, for example. Is anyone in your respective organizations, I guess it's more geared towards the technology companies, talking about this? I know there's still a lot of solutions that need to be addressed before we get to that point, but you know, as quickly as technology advances and solutions come up, is anyone even talking about this, monetization, I mean, are we all going to be wearing these glasses and, you know, you're going to have Nordstrom in your left eye and Bowles in your right? What are we thinking? Just thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, without a doubt, we have a whole group called the emerging group. We jokingly call him the 5th, 6th, and 7th screen guy. Right? We figured we got the 4 screens covered right now. It's sort of our standard. But you look at like partnerships, we have partnerships with LG and Samsung, and we're looking at refrigerators. We're looking at digital picture frames. We're looking at all these different places where media can get consumed. Gas station pumps. I mean, there's video screens everywhere. There's channels to buy and sell.
Are you really looking at digital picture frames?
Yes. Samsung. I mean, you can walk by a Samsung digital picture frame with your phone and go like that for a video.
I put ad blocker on my digital picture frame. It's the only thing I'm going to put ad blocker on because I'm in the business. I'm going to make one exception. Digital picture frame. But no, this is a good question because I mean this technology as it becomes something that propagates. You know, what do we do? How are we setting ourselves up for it?
Well, there's I think 2 questions in your question. The first is, you know, yes, the technology providers out here will have people who are investigating emerging channels. I think the other question is, and it's something referring to standardization. You know, with all these different mediums to deliver messages on, you're going to have different codecs. And I think the unspoken thing we're talking about right now is the browser wars and the different codecs that have to exist in order to traffic a multi-screen video campaign. And, you know, again, lean on your technology providers. I mean, we have a product that can help with that. You give us a media plan, you give us an asset, it spits out all the different permutations that you need for that media plan. But I think we kind of settled on MPEG as a de facto codec. But then Google did their whole thing. Apple has i612. WebM is out there. Please don't do FLVs if you can avoid it because your advertisers will hate you because it's terrible quality. Which is something that is also a hurdle that we're looking to come across in the next couple of months. I think digital video grew at a rate that I think surprised a lot of people, and we had solutions in place to stream videos and to deliver progressive videos. And I think with all of the new modern web browsers and all of the modern web development technology that's out there, I think now we're starting a whole new format war in terms of, yes, HTML5 and Flash exists and they're fighting each other vigorously, but we also have these video codecs, and we need to make sure that whatever we produce looks as good as it possibly can. And I think that's something that we're looking to solve every day as well.
Sorry, I've had a few drinks, so just bear with me here. So my question is more about the fact that, we've been talking a lot about TV and video together, rightfully so, but is it better for us to think about digital video to try to align it with TV, or do we really set separate objectives for these two things working together? So we have different opportunities for digital video. We have interactivity, we can do dynamic things, and all that. Do we really try to find a separate objective for our digital video pieces that work congruently with TV, or do we try to match them together and say, TV and digital video are exactly the same in the fact that we need to maximize our TRPs and reach and frequency and to figure that out? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Awareness or direct response? What do you guys think?
I'd love to jump in on that one. So I do think that at a first approximation, planning and buying them together is the right thing to do. But one thing that I don't want to lose when we do that is the depth of audience targeting and understanding that we can have it digital. And you mentioned some other things about the interactive metrics and so on, I think are cool. But we've spent a lot of time recently at TV trying to get good at delivering on Nielsen, age, gender, very TV-like targets on the digital medium, and that's because we want to be treated like television, because television is what the dollars are, and that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. But what can easily be lost if we all get sucked completely down that hole, and we all just go and only think about it like television, and we use only the Nielsen tool set, is, like, whoever said that age and gender were like the right way to target your message, right? So pretty much all of us represent brands or work with brands that have a much more nuanced idea of who that target consumer is, the person that we want to reach, right? And there's beautiful briefs, right, that are written about, you know, the psychographics and, you know, what kind of beer they drink and what kind of car they drive and all this kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, when you go to our television, you know, in most places, it gets shrunk down to like this age, gender, you know, target, and then the TV buyer decides to negotiate, and it comes back and said, you know, here's what we're going to buy, and here's the CPM or the cost of the whatever. So I do agree with you that I think if that's the future of digital video, like that is kind of a sad outcome. And I hope instead that we end up with a fusion. And most people that I talk to these days think that we have to do both. Like, we're going to have to play like TV because there's a lot of money being traded in TV with those targets. And so we're always, at least for the foreseeable future, going to have to measure and report on that stuff and price on that stuff. But that when you have the digital component, that we should also do a deeper, right? It'll be like an overlay of some sort, where you've got your primary age gender target, and then overlay on top of that, you've got these sort of interest or behavioral attributes of some sort. And you're targeting against those, and you're measuring against those.
Well, I think you're shifting into something else that, you know, we're all talking about ad space, but I mean, you get into branded content, you get into like, I mean, Glamour and GQ just launched beautiful content today. That maybe will run on the television channel, or maybe you can watch it on, you know, Virgin America, but that's really worth buying. They have a very targeted audience, it's very high quality content. And I think that professionally produced level of content, which may or may not make its way to TV, branded content that you can do, which gets shared if it's done well, or brand placements, those are all things to think about that are in the digital video realm as well. You can put your ad with that, or, you know, run it without an ad for the folks that are turned off by that kind of thing, and you can do it in 90 seconds. So I think it changes the nature of if we're talking about media being an ad or media being a story, and are we putting our products and the things we want people to be aware of and buy in stories, or are we using them to fund stories, right? So we go back a little bit more to the old model of the soap opera, and you know, think about like their theme songs, right? So that model is back. I mean, almost everyone in LA has a pilot based on a short that they made, or I always wanted to be an actor, now I can make a short on a weekend, and I'm putting it out there as my resume, and I got into a film festival, and now I'm working on this web series. You know, or people who are pigeonholed write themselves something like, you know, dropping the soap, and all of a sudden they have a whole other career. And these are all people that are accessible to you guys. I mean, there's a whole legion of creatives out there who want to write a story for you, whether or not you want to put an ad in front of it. And there are a lot of places to put it, and it's, I think, a really interesting part of digital video that gets left out of this part of the conversation. That's, you know, it's there, and it can be really cost effective, but it's a completely different type of ecosystem than we're used to talking about.
And I think also one last point, I think that's a great question, because I think we do digital video, we do marketing, and most of all we do our brand clients at this service. We think of the world as black and white, as branding or direct response. It's not, it's a funnel. It's shades of gray along that funnel. And really that's the opportunity of digital video, because digital video bridges the world of brand and the world of direct response. Because to your point, you can do both within the ad unit. So what digital video enables us to do is really be marketers. It allows us to understand how do consumers make purchase decisions, how do they increase their consideration, how do they move through the buying path for a car, right? And it used to be, well, you went to TV, you went to print, you went to billboards, and you just got awareness of it. Then you figured out how to get them into the showroom and convert them, right? Well, now you can do a lot more intermediate steps to move them along that consideration path with digital video. And it allows us to engage with our clients, engage them in full marketing plans, not just advertising. And that's really the beauty of this platform.
This question's for Jill. Isn't it a myth that people are watching, Jill B, isn't it a myth that people are watching less television across all demos?
Is it a myth that they're watching less television?
Right. We hear it alluded to, I see many presentations, and they are everybody's saying they're going to steal dollars from television when people are watching more television than ever.
Wow.
I mean, you're the resident.
You guys probably have stats on this too. I mean, I think you're onto something in that the stats that I have seen is that people aren't watching less television, they're watching more distracted television. They're watching television fragmented, they're watching it while they're using their tablet and they're playing around with it.
But Nielsen does a time spent survey every year, and every quarter. So the Q4 2012 time spent survey, Q3 or Q4, the last one I read, okay, actually said that time spent on TV, which is sort of what we care about as marketers, actually for the first time went down. It wasn't hugely down, right? It's been up and up and up and up for an entire rise of digital, and it continues to increase. But the time spent is actually starting to sort of level and slightly downturn, slightly. But what is still growing is ad spend on TV. So ad spend in TV continues to grow. That market has been growing at like 5 to 10% per year after year. So it's sort of something interesting going on here, like, because we're here representing probably the largely works with digital video, we were really interested and excited to see that the time spent is actually starting to go down. But to your point, they're still watching TV, but they're also consuming other things. So it's actually the time spent is now like overlapping, and it's certainly fragmented, right? So it's, even if they are watching TV, they're watching TV on more and more channels in a way that's not always easy to buy using the traditional Nielsen currency.
But it still reaches 97% of Americans in a given month.
Right.
People watch 145 hours of television a month.
But is that cable?
It's awful.
But what I'm saying is, so I can speak for my household, it's mostly through Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime.
That's bad.
I think you're the 1%.
What?
You're the 1%, or you're the 5%. You're a small group because there are a lot of people who are doing that. But I think it's true though. But I think you're at the leading edge. Most of the people in this room are probably way over indexed, probably a 900 index for cord cutting, right? But shame on us because we're in the business. But I think that it's true, and the people that we hang out with are probably the same way. But I think that, and it's growing, but it's way smaller than you think it is. And every stat that I view opens my eyes. I'm like, holy crap, really? Wow. The cord cutters are still a very, 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 very small subset of people who are consuming television. People are still really watching The Bachelor. I mean, that becomes a water cooler moment, and people watch it live and then watch it on television.
But, would you say that product integration in TV is more crucial these days than actually doing a commercial?
That's an excellent question. That was one of my questions.
I'm a 20-something woman, so I represent huge buying power as a demographic. I can't stand to watch a television commercial unless I'm doing a lead, like to find who's advertising. So I mute it, I go back to my laptop or my iPad or my iPhone or whatever distraction I have, and then I go back to the television show, and I'm super engaged. Like, I notice when Target is integrated into Modern Family, when Claire's going to Target, rather than a 60-second ad with the cool, super cool model walking down with the cake exploding.
That's a really good example.
Well, I just wanted to point out an analogy. We've all had sites come in and say, we get 8 million people a month to our site. And 8 million people watch a show about people who make duck calls for 1.5 hours. So that's kind of shows you the television. And also, I think to Dan's point, you are the 1%.
No, it's true. And the bit about the integration, I think, is an important point to make, because the one thing about integration, remember I had this slide about great cut, right? And we had Tig and I had a conversation before this started, which was the traditional TV people are buying traditional TV. The digital people are buying digital, extensions of that. If you're in community and that's two different groups buying the same thing in community. If you do an integration in community and they're all sitting around having a nice cold Pepsi, you're done. You did it. It's everywhere, right? That's the only thing that's everywhere.
But
and I feel like that's got to.
Yeah.
know what, they can actually add, they can,
Vacation in the fall, the actual that Target was integrated into it.
it is possible to swap out the Pepsi can for Coke. But no, integration really expensive. Is the one magic bullet that costs it, right? But it's the magic bullet that allows you to go cross-platform.
Well, another thing that we've done with the revenge, but was taking an idea that sort of was born in TV and making sure that that user experience, that viewer was getting the same experience across all of the different platforms, whether it was on air, if it was on the ABC app, as well as over there on Hulu, to make sure that the content that was created was seen exactly as we had intended across all channels. So I do think it's important for digital and TV to come together as video. But I do think that in terms of an integration, there are things that you can do in program or surrounding program that are.
And I would think about it also, this is a little bit more important thing to think about if you're targeting people under 27, African Americans, Hispanics. They're just a lot less likely to watch your show in the television context. Right? You know, the same Nielsen study that Ted was referencing, actually the one that's for Q4 has a huge section on breakout by ethnic group. And we've seen an amplification of shift in African American households, not, you know, kind of that middle tier of, you know, we're doing okay, but we can't afford a full cable package, and we all maybe want to watch what we want to watch, so we're not going to get a hard line into the house. Everybody gets a phone, everybody can watch what they want to watch, they control their own programming, they set their own channel. It's the same thing that we see in the African American community. Again, like, control your phone, control your, you know, control what you're watching. You don't need to be at home, it doesn't matter where you are. And then you get under 27, people don't even know what time things are on. They don't know what night. Like, I posted something the other night about I've never watched this show in real time. It was on America's Most Watched Network. I won't put my name. And it was all for like laxatives and Cialis and everything else. And I was like, oh my God, I don't even want to be associated with this. I feel like I'm under 27. You know, but that, I was like, if I watch this online, if I watch this in another context, I get a completely different ad set. I would have no idea, except for like that one time I actually happened to be home and two things were recorded and they watched something.
And the only thing that really helps offset is that that's where the Bachelor thing that I was talking about earlier is if there's something that's in sports, if it's an event that you feel that you have to watch as it happens because everybody's going to be tweeting about it, then you have to watch it as it happens and you're sort of exposed to the end. So I would say that The Bachelor, sports, a show like Breaking Bad, those are the kind of shows that people are going to check out.
I just grew up Game of Thrones.
I was going to say,
I know everyone.
Game of Thrones. HBO.
I have to tell you, those of us at this table here are laughing because I'm a freelance interactive media planner and buyer. I would love to have a television budget. I don't have a television budget. So with that in mind, knowing that we are trying to, you know, some of my clients are trying to make themselves look big as if they're on TV, what are some key considerations for clients who can't, in fact, afford television, but want to make themselves look big in the video world?
That's a great question. And that's where you have to start to actually look at the inventory you're buying online, right? Or in connected screens, mobile and other. So not every piece of inventory is of equal value. Not every impression is of equal value. So you need a way to try to grade and understand the inventory opportunity for you. In TV, that's done pretty well and easy to understand. But in digital video, it's much harder to understand because you can't use that same TV model of like a site list and just say I'm going to buy from the site list. Because site lists get expensive and they're hard to differentiate. So you need to go beyond the site list and look at people who are trying to help you understand value of inventory and get you right CPM rate for the right kind of inventory that you want to be in. And you do that by trying to understand where do I want to be, where is my advertising goal, what kind of targeting do I want to do. Am I doing geo-targeting, BT targeting, demo targeting, am I doing a combination of all three? And then you use that and mix it together in an inventory grading algorithm, if you will, that helps you understand the value of all the inventory opportunities you have in the case of a network buy across publishers. And some of us in our space have that kind of technology to help you do that. So.
I think that's one of the areas too where programmatic can shine. Back to some of the presentation. But you don't have to be big to buy media programmatically because it's not about the relationship per se. You can, every dollar is more or less treated equally, right? And programmatic technology is available for digital media now. So one of the things that's really cool, I think we're going to see changes in the next year, is some of those same programmatic technologies coming to television. There's no reason why some TV spot inventory, TV that you're watching through your cable provider, can't be bought and sold programmatically. There are a lot of things that I know about that are coming soon, where smaller buyers, and large ones, small and large buyers, will be able to self-service buy ad spots through software. That's essentially the same way that you buy book on Amazon. And those ads will actually run in the television program. It might not be, it certainly won't be, the top broadcast networks and the top primetime spots, but it can certainly be television and can certainly reach its best audience.
And I would throw up, we hear a lot of, I can't do video because I don't have a TV ad. There's nothing holding you back from buying a pre-roll spot and putting something else in there. Right? We've done integrations where we put the whole Barney's Christmas catalog with e-commerce and Pinterest into a pre-roll video spot. It doesn't have any video in it. You can just shop in it. And you have to watch it for 30 seconds or, have people really engage with it. So, you can always take the ads that you have in another medium and go ahead and put them in the spots where video should go. People interact with it, and it puts you front and center. It gives you that 15 or 30 seconds. You get the same amount of exposure time. And you probably already have the assets for it.
Just sort of following up on it, it seems like I've never seen it, glad you mentioned it, it seems like a very unnatural environment to run like a shopping experience. So people are engaging with it. Are you seeing like lift in terms of sales? Or you can actually do a lot of things in that ad unit. So what are the benefits that you're seeing of doing something that's that unique and creative out of the box?
A lot of it, some of it is just allowing someone to be in that kind of space ahead of video content and see what that does for you. Throw all the analytics we have after it and see, track it through to sales and see how it works. So that just puts it in the mix for you. I think if you added social, we can track through the earned media and as well as the conversion points online. The other one that's powerful is if you have CPG and you add your offline data to that, your loyalty card data, we can actually look at someone who interacts with the ad, will they ultimately go buy a product somewhere, or credit card data, that's another one you can use. So I think if you think about tying together, the most value is, can I take from this interactive experience, right, where I'm doing something other than watching a video, and tie it through to some other type of data where I got to an endpoint that I wanted to get to, whether it's an online purchase or landing on your home page or trying out downloading your app, whatever it is. But make sure you align it with both learning what's going on inside the ad and then also something else that shows you an objective that you achieved.
How are we doing on time, Greg?
Mike?
10 minutes.
All right, good.
There you go, 10 minutes.
Let's take a couple more questions, and then we have a wrap-up question from the panel that I'm curious about. So,
earlier in most of this, we've been talking about online video versus television and how we're going to buy those together or separate. Does anyone have any comments on standard pre-roll versus interactive pre-roll and aligning those more with flash initiatives versus rich media and separating just the online video buy?
Yeah, that's a great question. The study that once you say, should I use made for TV or should I use made for web, the next question is, what should I do to it to make it better? What kind of interactive elements should I put on it? Should it be 15 or 30? I mean, just anecdotally from our own network operations, 15 seconds have better video completion rates, 30 seconds have better brand recall metrics. So it's also dependent on your campaign objectives, what you're trying to achieve. And different types of interactive calls to action have different effects in different verticals and in different contexts. So there is no rule of thumb for all video advertising. It's very campaign objective specific.
We've actually seen a lift in completion rates for interactive units as opposed to non-interactive units. So when you introduce that interactive element, you're encouraging engagement, and the user, it's that lean forward, lean back argument. They go in, they interact, they do whatever you're asking them to do in the unit, and when they close out the interactive layer, they let the video complete at a much higher percentage than if you just have a standard in-stream unit.
Right, so I have a question, because one trend I've noticed over the last 10 years that I don't like, and it's on the broadcast side, is it used to be that almost every agency in town had broadcast buyers. And they would all buy, and it was fairly level. And now that doesn't happen anymore. Almost all buying is done, with the exception of like Hayward, but you guys have Target, so that's a huge, huge company. But most buying is done out of giant media houses like Starcoms and OMPs, which those companies have a real vested interest, along with the television sides, to not let TV get controlled the way digital is controlled. Because, in case you don't know, when you buy television, there's a nice net gross thing that happens. And the agency gets a huge kickback that doesn't really happen in digital. So I'm wondering, is that going to be something that's going to have to be forced away? And obviously the television, they're getting huge CPMs, right, that they love. That on the programmatic buying, you don't see that. It's a natural, what's the real market value? So do you think on both sides there's going to be a struggle to kind of pull that old sort of infrastructure away from combining video and television?
Folks who participate in the TV ecosystem, don't feel like, if that's their bread and butter, they don't feel a lot of urgency to change things. So that's not where it's going to come from. It's got to come from the brand, right? The brand is going to have to say, this is something I demand, that I want. One of the things I would note is that the buying and selling of TV is extremely efficient in a way, in that huge amounts of media are transacted by very few people in very few hours every year. Right? There's many billions.
But is that really fair to the brand? It's because Starcom can control $5 billion worth of television. So they can go in and set the CPMs, right? Because they control so much. But that doesn't, it just doesn't seem fair to the industry and to the brands. And maybe I'm wrong because I don't look at Starcom, so I don't know how it goes. But it just seems like there's something weird, or plus you don't know the kickbacks. I mean, we all hear about what's going on and what buyers are getting, and it just seems like there's some shady areas going on.
Well, while the Starcoms of the world do control a considerable amount of budget, it's not in networks' best interest to undercut their own pricing in order to move that kind of volume. So, as a smaller agency, we are able to fly under the radar a little bit and get more advantageous pricing than a Starcom, because it's the impact of us taking a smaller increase versus Starcom taking a smaller increase. When you net out the money, ABC or NBC is going to make more money off of that.
So then, but then why have all the agencies, why have broadcast buyers disappeared in the market? I mean, there really isn't many. You look at Carmichael, they used to have 5 to 10, and now they have 1. And Fallon doesn't have any. I mean, most of the agencies, they hired one. Hey, that's great, but they didn't for the last 6. So, I mean, why do you think that is then, if you're saying that there is an advantage of being small?
Well, we also have an advantage of being a media-owned agency. So I think, and coming from the agency side where creative and media was done in the same shop, I think in this market there is a real emphasis put on the creative work, and a lot of the brands that are handled by agencies here are huge autos where they're being consolidated with a single
You want to do the last question?
Well, we're getting toward the end, so I had a question that I wanted to pose to the panel. We could even do lightning round. It makes it more fun. But the question is this, it's not the year 2013, it is the year 2018. And we're all still here, we're all still working in the same industry. And we're at the same conference. We're at the same conference, we came to the same place. We parked our hoverboards out in the we need hoverboards because of the rising sea levels. But we came to the same place, we're still working in the digital video industry, digital industry. But obviously the title of the panel in 2018 is not Video, the Power of Sight, Sound, and Motion. The title of the panel and the subject of our discussion in 2018 is what? Dan?
I'd like to see delivering vast tags on television. And the targeting that we can have with a vast tag and the type of audiences that we can deliver ads to, I think that's the future. I hope.
I'm going to go with more personalized messaging. So I think what we're actually going to talk about is, marketing to you. I think people are getting more comfortable with that idea. You probably have, something that you can, I think Google Glass, my eye doctor said it's going to be terrible for you. I just keep thinking of like that thing in the Steve Martin movie, right? So, sure. But I think there's a way to project out in front of your eyes so that you can see something at the moment that you want to see it. So I think we're going to see a lot more screens in places where they're projected on water vapor, they're out in front of you, projected in front of your eyes, on your, in safe places where they can be put in your everyday life. In your auto, when you have, right, your car will be driven by, Google Maps, so you will be able to watch whatever you want in your car because you won't have to drive anymore. So I think about more, how do we get the data in order so that you can find me and the things that I want and tell me that story instead of, trying to bundle together lots of groups of people and overcome fragmentation the opposite way by trying to get a little more personalized in the way that we market using data within everyone's comfort level. That takes some of the platforms out of the way instead of trying to assemble the audience with the same kind of likes and dislikes.
2018? Yeah. Everything's an app.
5 plus 5?
Everything is an app. ABC's an app, NBC's an app, there is no broadcast TV. Everything is an app. You come home, you turn on your connected TV, and you double click to watch.
1%.
That's the world. This distinction, this screen is going to be on your living room wall. You're not going to change channels. You're going to browse for apps. You're going to get app recommendations. You're going to buy media within apps. And everything will be done through APIs. And the world of cookies will be gone. And the world of cookieless targeting will have emerged. So it's a whole different world and a different way of thinking about media.
I just don't, in 5 years, I just don't see broadcast television going away. I think long tail, as millennials and digital natives age, that's definitely something that's going to happen long term. But I don't see my then 67-year-old mother shooting anything to alone. I love her, and as tech savvy as she may be at this point. But I think there are still going to be those larger social moments, sporting moments that are going to happen live and are going to be delivered to your television screen via cable, satellite, the TV.
The people who are going to be eligible for AARP in 2018 are going to be Gen X. So that's...
Self-serving though, maybe, I think that the baseline will be that a huge fraction of the dollars are traded programmatically. Okay? It doesn't mean that there isn't any dollars. There'll still be a lot of dollars that require negotiation and consultative selling, definitely. But with that baseline, because think about it, 5 years ago, like ad exchanges and RT didn't exist. Now it's 15% of display. It's something like 8% of video. So if that's the case, then I think we won't be talking about that anymore. That won't be interesting. So what we'll be talking about is, I hope, ROI. Right? I hope we're sitting here talking about, since we can track all of this stuff really, really carefully, and we have hopefully Nielsen and ComScore or new competitors that up their game, we can all be sitting and talking about measurement and how do we actually track back our media purchases to the return that we really care about.
Let me hope it doesn't take 5 years for us all to talk about ROI. All right, thanks to everybody.